Hello guys, welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show, and welcome. It is Friday, and we have made it to Friday, and it's been a pretty good week, Chris. Who is here? I think, I'm still really buzzing after the Ian Rankin show we had the other week. And did you see on Twitter this week, or today in fact, that he actually sent that beer mat that he got very confused about being a GIF and a gift? He sent that beer mat to one of the listeners, which was absolutely fantastic. I can't believe he did that.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, it probably was a trip to the post box for him, which is, let's be honest, is probably adventurous at this moment in time.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it was. And, he did walk to the pub to pour himself a beer outside the pub on his birthday last year. So hello to you all on the chat. Fantastic to see you all here. If you are watching this live, please engage. Send your questions in for our guests today, because we will ask them in the second half of the show. We will, in fact, pop them up on screen so that we can see them and read them out. So it's going to be a good show and very interesting. There's a lot of work that this guest has done, and it's also extending on. There's a big plan involved. So we'll be very interested, to find out how that works. And I'm sure you guys will be too. And yeah, should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do the beer token, because you always
beer
forget
token
about that.
book promotion. I don't always forget, but
It sounded like you were going to forget then. That's why I mentioned it.
No, I did. Last week I forgot, but it popped into my head as soon as you said that there. So yeah, so this week's beer token book promotion, it's a big one to spit out, is someone who's been on the show before. She's a big fan of the show. She's part of our family in our community, which is amazing. And that is Anya Pavil. So her book, called The Garden of Stone Houses, apologies, it's had 6 ratings on Amazon. It's fairly new out, and it's had 5 out of 5 stars, which is incredible. It's available as an ebook and as a paperback, and someone said, I love this book, hands down, it's brilliant. In 19th century New Orleans, 18-year-old Selene O'Neill is on a mission to save her mother from the clutches of a cruel man and uncover the truth about the death of her father. Selene digs deep into her family's past, which is shrouded in secrets and mystery. Fortunately, she gets help from the Lows, benevolent spirits who communicate through the dead father's tarot cards, which sounds very exciting. So,
Definitely.
Yeah, please check that out and support the authors that support this show, because without them, really, the show wouldn't keep going on. And I'll pop the cover at the top there, so please do check that out. And
nice. And that's a great cover, by the way.
Really, it is.
Like it. Loving the purple vibes.
It definitely goes with the story, and we were talking just before we came on air about how important the cover is, and that, I think, very rings true to the story, which doesn't always happen. So well done. So tonight's guest, let's get her on and stop waffling on for you guys. She is the author of The Priory of the Orange Tree, Because You Love to Hate Me, and the Bone series. Her latest addition to that is The Mask Falling, which is Mr. Hooley has in his hands there, and that was released on the 26th of January. So welcome to the show, Samantha Shannon.
Hello, how are you?
We are excellent, thank you. And for the first time in about 3 weeks, I got the guest name right. So that's brilliant.
Hurrah. That's great. Actually, a lot of people get my name wrong because it's Samantha Shannon. Obviously, it's 2 first names, so a lot of people will just call me Shannon straight off the bat.
Oh wow! Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's always a little awkward because I just don't know how to correct them. So I'm just like, sure, my name can be Shannon.
Just nod.
That's fine.
Yeah. It was fantastic to have you on, and thank you so much for joining us. Is all well? Are you all good?
I'm good. Yeah, I was just thinking what a lovely title that book has that you just advertised, The Garden of Stone Houses. It's gorgeous.
It is. Anya is she's regular on the show, and I'm sure she's watching right now. I haven't quite checked the chat yet, but she does very well with the books, and I'm sure that is no exception. So well done.
Like
yeah, she is. There she is. Hello to you.
Hi. Excellent title. I love it.
Yeah. So just the first thing we love to do on this show, before we get into maybe what's coming and what's happening right now and some silly questions, we like to dig into the past and find out what you as an author, what you've done, sort of where the inspiration came from in the first place and how you got into writing. So if you wouldn't mind sort of giving us that first impression of writing in your life.
Absolutely. Well, I've been writing since I was probably about 9 years old. Nothing, too magnificent, just little tiny stories that I used to write in my grandma's house. I've probably wanted to be an author since I was about 12. Before that, I wanted to be a vet or a paleontologist, or basically whatever was in the latest movie I liked. And then I suddenly figured out that I was terrible at science, so all of those careers were out of the window. But yeah, basically I suddenly realized that you could write books for a living, and that was all I wanted to do after that. So when I was about 15, I started writing my very first full-length novel.
Wow.
It was called Aurora, and it was not very good, but I tried. It was a very long novel. It was probably over 200,000 words, so quite chunky. Wow. Yeah, I was working on that for about 2 years, I would say. And when it was finished, I sent it to agents, and unsurprisingly, they didn't want it. But I was very lucky that one agent, David Godwin, he was very sweet, and he said to me, like, I think you've got potential. So if you send me something else of yours, when you've got a bit more experience, then I'd definitely love to have a look at it. And my backup plan, if I couldn't be an author, was to be, an editor or a publisher or something like that. So I sort of cheekily asked David if I could be an intern. And he said yes. So he gave me an internship at his agency in the summer of 2011. Yeah, I knew how to hustle back then. So I went into, this was while I was at university. So I was studying at Oxford at the time. I was doing English language and literature. And I went into this internship. And the internship was really interesting in terms of figuring out what agents like and what they look for, what puts them off a manuscript, which taught me quite a lot. But also the agency was based in Covent Garden, and specifically a little district called Seven Dials. And somehow I'd lived in London my whole life, and I'd gone to Covent Garden before, and I'd never, ever discovered this little district. And it's basically where 7 streets come together around this beautiful sundial pillar. And the shops in the area sell crystal balls, tarot cards, that kind of thing. And I was interested because I'd never seen a book that used clairvoyance as a magic system before. I mean, there probably is one, but I hadn't ever discovered something like that. And I thought it'd be quite interesting to do that, kind of like a modern day witch hunt where you have clairvoyance being hunted by the government. And I rolled it together with an idea I'd had separately at Oxford, which was sort of a dark vision of Oxford. I find Oxford normally portrayed as a fairy tale city. It's, the city of dreaming spires. You think of like Pullman's Oxford, for example. But I was in quite a dark mindset when I was at Oxford. I was under a lot of pressure, and I think my mind rendered it as a very dark, forbidding place. So I sort of rolled these 2 ideas together. They probably could have been separate novels, probably might have been sensible, but I put the 2 ideas together and they became The Bone Season.
Wow.
And so I drafted it in the 6 months, I think, after the internship. And I was lucky that when I was at college, the Scottish author Ali Smith came to our college. She was a visiting professor of comparative literature, I think. And she offered to look at students' writing. And I was absolutely terrified because she had a reputation for being really harsh. Like if you wrote something rubbish, she would tell you so. So I got the first chapter of The Bone Season and I printed it off and I sent it, and I walked to her office and I was shaking, like physically shaking, because I was already a little bit, I was a bit shaken from having spent so long on Aurora and then it being rejected. So I was so scared of being rejected again. And I remember I sat down in the tutor's office and she said, "This is brilliant. You could get it published." And I was like, oh, okay, cool, fine.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool, like a writer of her stature, for sure.
Did you adjust anything before submitting that first chapter? Did you feel like you had to revise that work, or did you just believe in it enough at that point to just deliver it as it was?
Oh, I definitely didn't believe in it. I did not believe in myself at all after Aurora, because I was so convinced that everything I wrote was, when you're a teenager, when you get rejected, it's so painful. Like, in love or in books, it's also very similar. I was really scared. I suppose I must have adjusted it a bit. I actually don't remember it. It was only about 10 years ago, but I barely remember now. I do remember the walk to the office though, and how badly I was shaking. And she'd sort of written notes on the manuscript and she'd underlined it saying, "Oh, this is really good. And your voice is really strong." And she didn't really have any criticism at all, which took me, and I was like, I think I was 20 at the time. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I called my mum and I was like, "Oh, Mum, this author has come to our college and she says I'm a really good writer and I'm really excited. So I'm going to send it back to David," who was the agent I'd worked for, and really did not expect him to want it because he doesn't really do fantasy, generally speaking. So I said to him, like, I've written something. I don't know if it's any good, but Ali Smith says it's quite good. And he was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll have a look at it and I'll see if I can pass it on to an agent who does this kind of thing." And I waited a few days and there was silence initially. And then I suddenly got an email saying, "This is good." I was like, oh, okay, let's not get our hopes up, but that's nice. He sent another email saying, "No, this is really good." I was like, okay, fine. Still not getting my hopes up. And then he just says, "Can you come to London?" It's like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So went to London and met him, and he said, "I'd like you to be my client." And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So it was, and all this happened in quite a compacted amount of time. So that's the general story of how I got to have an agent.
Fantastic, yeah. Writing as a 15-year-old, I guess, or even starting at 12 years old, you must have been very sort of self-aware as to what you wanted, because at 12 years old, 15, 16 years old, I don't really know what I wanted, and probably still don't. But to be that self-aware and actually know that you want to write, and to be at 15 years old writing 200,000 words is fantastic. Was this something, that story at the time, did you know it was going to be that big, or did you just want to write something that big, or did it just sort of happen that way?
Do you know, looking back on it, I have no idea why it was that big, because my novel, The Priory, The Orange Tree, is big because it has four perspectives. You know, it's a big, epic fantasy novel. But Aurora only had like one or two perspectives. So I think I was just waffling a lot. So no, I'm not really sure why it was so big, but I did know pretty firmly what I wanted to do. Like I said, as soon as I had the writing bug, and I know some people say they had it much younger, and you know they've always wanted to be a writer since they were 4 or 3 or whatever. And like I said, I didn't have that. I was really desperate to build robots, and then I was just like, oh, actually, sorry, I don't have a genius mind. Never mind. But yeah, once I knew that was all I wanted to do, and I worked so passionately towards that. I would come home from school, I would write, I would do my homework, I would write deep into the night, to the point that my mum, just purely out of care for me to try to make sure I got some sleep, she used to take literally detach my keyboard from my computer and hide it somewhere just to make sure I was sleeping. Yeah, because otherwise I would have been up until 4 and I would have been getting up at 7 for school again, because I was also trying to do my GCSEs and my A levels, and you know everyone wanted me to go to the best university I could, so I was studying and writing. So yeah, I don't know how I did it looking back on it.
Yeah, Kazia on the chat, I hope we got that name right. She says, "Priory is such a good book. What an accomplishment to have written."
Oh, thank you, Kazia.
So there's a compliment right there. So when you said this book is a lot bigger, how many words is that book?
Priory. That is 265,000 words, so pretty chunky. Not as big as the one I'm currently writing, which I can't really talk about, but it's massive.
Can you talk about the word count, or not at all?
Just crested 285,000, I think, and I haven't finished it, so I think it's definitely going to hit 300,000. But then I think my editor will probably make me hammer it down a little bit.
Wow.
Maybe.
So how long does a book, say, if on average, say a 2,000 word book, how long does that take you to first draft?
Really depends. I mean, the Bone season, I think, was 150k or something along those lines. Like maybe, 128. Sorry. So that took me 6 months to draft. But that's very unlike me now. I seem to have slowed down as I got older.
Right.
And there's complex reasons for that, which I'm sure I'll get into later. But yeah, when I was a student, I just seemed to be able to run like an engine and just write this massive draft in no time at all. The draft I'm writing now has taken me well over a year. And that's, again, for a number of reasons. I had a bereavement in 2019, so that slowed me down. I had, obviously, we've all had the pandemic, which has slowed me down, because normally I wander around quite a lot in my natural writing form. You know, I go to cafes and I might go to a friend's house, but I've been indoors the whole time. So it's changed the way I work. So it really does depend on the book. I could never really guess how long it's going to take.
Where's your Sorry, Chris.
Sorry,
Where's your favourite place to write if you sort of a wanderer? Where's the place you sort of sit down the best to write?
I like coffee shops just because I like the background noise and the warmth and the coziness, and I suppose it makes you feel kind of classically like a writer, you know, in that romantic image of writing in a coffee shop.
No, I was just going to say, Samantha, like being 15 or 16, you know, a lot of children or teenagers have this dream that they really aspire to at that time, and they push and they push and they push, but when they get to that age, it starts to dwindle off. So I was just wondering if there's anyone watching, obviously, that is in a very similar position to what you were in when you had that rejection. You know, you put all that effort into 200,000 words, and then you got that knockback. How did you pick yourself up from that, and what advice would you give to somebody else who's in that position at the moment?
It was definitely a hard blow because, like I said, when you're a teenager, I think that your self-confidence is often quite fragile because you're barely building yourself as a person, and everything can seem like such a massive, if you fail, it seems like it's going to be the whole rest of your life. It's going to define you, this one failure, if you don't get into the right uni, or if what happened to me happened where, I'd spent all this time writing this book and then it just didn't go anywhere. And I remember the exact thing that triggered me realizing that this book was not going to work. And this movie called I Am Number 4 came out, and it was an adaptation of a novel, and it had quite a similar plot to Aurora. And I was just like, for a whole week, I just sobbed. I was like, I can't write it now because somebody else has written about aliens and a hot alien coming to Earth. But yeah, the way I would say, I definitely say if it's specifically about writing, nothing you ever write is wasted. And I think this is so important because if I hadn't written Aurora, I would not have written The Bone Season. I would not have had the skill or the experience to write The Bone Season. Even though it wasn't published, it taught me how to write a book. It taught me how to commit to writing a book. It taught me how to divide up chapters, how to hook someone. And even though it didn't, it did attract David's attention. Like, you can see that I was a decent writer. So yeah, that's how I would say specifically to writers, like nothing you do is ever wasted. And I think that's probably true in life as well.
Will Aurora ever see the light of day? Will you rewrite that one day?
Hell no. I actually, there was a small publisher actually offered to publish it like a few years ago. They sent me an email. It was really sweet. They were like, oh, just to let you know, we'd be really willing to publish Aurora. And I was like, no. It's very sweet of you, but no. The reason for that is partly because it's just not very good. It's very melodramatic. It's got a lot of ideas about romance that I think I'd absorbed as a teenager that are actually not very good. It makes me kind of uncomfortable reading it. And also I used all of the best bits for The Bone Season. So it's where I started designing a few concepts in the magic system that I use, but I stripped everything that was decent out of it and reworked it into The Bone Season. So what's left is just not great.
I was going to say that if you hadn't stripped it, then maybe not say never, because Ian Rankin the other week on the show said that he had something he'd written a long time ago and that he dismissed and then went back to and then thought it was really good. So it's one of those things that may be a timing issue, or if you are someone that's written something that you maybe thought was not great back in the day, don't dismiss it so quickly. Maybe have a go and read it. But if you have stripped it, then perhaps there's no option left to use that moving forward.
Absolutely. I think that's not true of everyone, for sure. I mean, people have sideboard novels that they tuck away, and it might just not be the right time in the market. You might not be at that level as a writer that you can quite carry off the concept. Like, there's some ideas that I haven't written yet just because I want to be a more skillful writer before I attempt them. So yeah, definitely if you have a novel tucked away. But I feel like, I wonder how old Ian Rankin was when he wrote that, because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some teenagers write absolutely magnificent first novels, but mine was not that.
So Samantha, you've already decided that you're going to be a writer. You've got it in your mind that you're going to write a book. What attracted you to fantasy and magic and exploring those elements?
I don't really know. I'd always been attracted to it. It's strange because when I was a kid, I did read fantasy, but the main thing I used to read was things like Jacqueline Wilson, which are very, very, contemporary teen fiction. But when I started writing for the first time, like some of the earlier novels I wrote, I don't really call them novels because they were very small, but one of the earliest things I wrote was a little book called Inferno, which was about a girl it was about dragons in Area 51, which I think is still quite a cool concept. And that they would go down this portal into hell and fight demons. And that was what Area 51 was hiding. And that was like the first thing I wrote that was not full length, but it was a bit developed. It wasn't just a short story, it had chapters. And yeah, then Aurora was sort of sci-fi. It was probably more sci-fi than fantasy. It was about, aliens coming to Earth and they're lost and they need to reunite, and a plucky teenage girl is going to get them back together. And of course she falls in love with the hot one. I don't know. It just seems to be what I was drawn to. I think it's because there's just so much possibility in fantasy and sci-fi. I think I would feel quite constrained by contemporary fiction because I'd be, writing a character doing something normal, and I'd be like, oh, I just want to put in a unicorn or something exciting like that. I have a very big imagination, and I think fantasy is where that gets free reign.
Definitely. I mean, dragons in Area 51 being sent down to fight demons is fantastic.
I know, it's quite cool. Maybe I could develop it as like a kid's book someday.
I'm not sure about that. Give it to the grown-ups. Give it to the
Okay,
grown-ups. We
fine.
need it.
All right, it's going to be a very serious book about dragons and demons in Area 51. Dan Brown could probably do it.
He's already done a book called Inferno, and it didn't have
Oh God, he
dragons.
has. I think that's why I thought of him. I was like, why did I think of Dan Brown? It's Inferno.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some good questions coming in the chat, but we'll save them for the writing community question time. So the Bone series, this is something that you've written 4 books in now, but it's set up for 7. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So when was that a decision made, and did you have any idea at that point that you could write 7, or is it sort of one of those things that you sort of plot or sort of do along the way, or is it something that's already pre-plotted out, if that makes sense?
It was always 7. When my agent sold the book to Bloomsbury, I was very clear with them. I wanted it to be 7 books.
Okay.
They were very excited about that. I think because they'd done working on Harry Potter, which was also a 7-book series. So I think that the team was excited by the concept of working on a long fantasy series again. And yeah, I always pictured it as 7. They bought the first 3 books initially, but it was always advertised as being a 7-book series. And that just always seemed like the right number. I always thought I can either write 5 massive books, but like unwieldy, which I know is hilarious coming from me because I wrote The Priory of the Orange Tree. But yeah, it just seemed like 7 was the right number for the story I wanted to tell. And even though the plot has changed a little over time, because I was 19 when I started it and I'm now 29, it has always been, I've always known roughly what each book is going to be about. I've always known The Mask Falling is going to be the Paris book and roughly what's going to happen. So yeah, surprisingly, even though some concepts in it have changed, it has also stayed pretty consistent in some ways.
So in terms of that forward planning then, Samantha, one of the things that comes out from your books is that, especially recently, is you leaving your fans on the edge of their seat and waiting for the next book. So was this always part of the plan to use that structure in each book? And yeah, I just thought, why did you decide to do that?
Well, I suppose to keep people reading. I mean, it's a very long series, and it's interesting because it's an adult fantasy series. When I went to my agent about it, I said, I don't really know if this is adult or YA or what this is, because the narrator was 19, which was the age I was when I started writing it. And I was like, I don't know if this is YA or what, but Bloomsbury saw it as adult. But it's interesting, it had always been advertised with this sort of crossover appeal. So it was pitched to both the YA and the adult audience. And the thing is, because I have quite a significant YA readership, or people who like YA, certainly, they are used to the yearly release schedule, which I just cannot seem to manage that. I've really, really tried, but it seems to be something I can't do without compromising the quality of my writing. So I try to make the series compelling enough that people will still want to come back to it after a long time. And one of the ways that you do that, I suppose, is with cliffhangers. I think it is a good, I don't do it with all my books, to be fair. Like the Bone season and the Songrising both have relatively clear cut endings. I mean, there's more, but the Mime Order and the Mask Falling do have pretty brutal cliffhangers. I even try to do that in the chapters themselves. I try to do a mini cliffhanger at the end of every chapter to keep you reading, because they are quite dense books.
Cliffhangers in chapters is something certainly that is advice to try and do when you're writing especially a new author. Is there any advice that you have as someone who's sort of learnt this as a craft? Because it was a comment on Twitter the other day in reply to you being on the show was, we ask about the cliffhangers? So have you got advice for someone who's a new writer that may be watching or listening to this in the future or now, how to sort of fit that into their work?
Sure. I mean, I try to do it, like I say, in every chapter, just a mini cliffhanger, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like a big shocking twist. It can just be something like an unresolved emotion, or it can just a sense of something more. And it really doesn't, it can be quite subtle. It doesn't have to be like, at the end of every chapter. It's very much just give the reader a little something to tide them over. And there's so many different ways you can do that. But I mean, again, it doesn't always have to be brutal. I do think that when people think cliffhanger, they think, a character gets stabbed from behind at the end of the chapter or something like that. But it can be more subtle than that.
So Samantha, what are the challenges in taking someone like Paige from the very beginning, obviously when you were a lot younger as well, and writing that character and evolving that character as your mindset is changing as well. Because obviously, the older you get, you're experiencing different things. They probably factor into your books. So how do you stay true to that character so she doesn't change too much, but she's got that natural progression as well?
Well, it actually happens naturally because, like I said, we were the same age when I started writing. Paige and I were both 19. And now, obviously, as she's growing up, I've been growing up, and I'm hoping that my voice as a writer has been naturally maturing, which hopefully makes Paige sound like she's maturing too. And I think it's actually a very special thing to be able to grow up with a character for that long, and to be able to, it's such a privilege to be able to have a 7-book series to develop this character in, because it's, you know, I can really make so much stuff happen to her over such a long time and try to explore how her character, you know, grows richer and changes in response to everything she's experienced. So I'm hoping it's not really been that much of a challenge because of that. It's been something that it just feels like she and I are connected and growing together. And I hope that comes across in the writing.
And is there ever, sorry, Chris, I was going to say, is there ever a fear when you're writing? Obviously, you've planned for these 7 books and you're writing, and then the ideas are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're thinking, I said 7. I always said 7. So now I need to make sure it ends on 7 and it's a satisfying ending and I tie it all in. Does that ever creep in, and what are you doing about that?
Yes, it does. I mean, there have been moments where I've been like, actually, do I need 8? But I'm trying really hard to stick to 7 because there's a lot of 7 symbology in the books. Like I said, I came up with the idea in 7 dials. There are 7 classes of clairvoyant. There are 7 members of Paige's gang. You know, it'd be a bit weird if I was suddenly like, oh, by the way, it's 8. It would sort of ruin the whole artistic piece I've tried to create. But yeah, it has been a challenge sometimes to work out what to put in each book and how to allocate the events of the series between the installments. And it's quite scary now because the first 4 installments, I have always planned in a ton of detail. You know, I've pretty much known everyone. The songwriting was a bit difficult for various reasons, but like I said, The Mask Falling, I always knew this was going to be in France. I've known for years that there's going to be this one particular scene in the Sainte-Chapelle. Whereas the 5th, 6th, and 7th books have always felt quite far away. And now suddenly I'm staring book 5 in the face, and it feels so surreal to finally be on the second half of the series and to be over that middle hurdle. So it is a little bit nerve-wracking, yeah.
I just like to take it back to Chris's last question when he mentioned the character development and sort of as you get older, the character gets older. Do you think at some point you might look back at, say, book 1 and 2 and think you might want to change things? Would you have faith in, would you have faith in the young you to represent that young character and leave it? Or would you be tempted as an older, more experienced author to want to change it?
There are definitely things I would change about the Bone season now. Mainly that the first chapter, for some reason, when I was a young author, and I think this is a common thing among debuts, you think that you have to explain the entire world to the reader in the first chapter. And it has been known to put people off the first book. So if I did it again, I definitely have the sort of ability now to see the world more carefully through, which is what I did with the Priory, the Orange Tree. I think, you know, I would never put the Bone season down and say it's like not a good book. I mean, considering how young I was, I think it was an incredible achievement. And I think there's a lot of really great things about it. But I would definitely love to do an edit on it now, just with more experience. Like there's different scenes I would write. It was nice recently because I wrote a novella called The Dawn Chorus, which comes between the songwriting and the mask falling. And I was able to return to the timeline of the Bone season via that in flashbacks. And it was just so lovely to be able to add to the first book as an older, more experienced writer. It was great fun.
So
Definitely.
Samantha, what's your editing process like? Because obviously you're talking about your books and they're huge. So when you're ready to get your book, obviously part of their job is to sort of tweak it and tailor it. So how does that go? Is it sort of to and fro process? So you send it over, they send it back, all these sorts of things. So yeah, that's a question.
That is exactly how it goes. Yeah. When I explain editing to people, because I think it is quite an obscure process from the outside, but it is very much a back and forth. We're passing the manuscript back and forth to each other and just slowly sculpting it into what both myself and the editor want it to be. It was interesting with Priory, because the book was so long. I actually had 4 editors at one point who had all given feedback on it. Surprisingly, it wasn't too difficult to handle, because some of them did heavier edits and some of them just came in with the odd opinion. But it was interesting hearing so many voices about the book.
So
but
you had a relay of editors.
Yes, I really did.
Like a baton, they passed your book on.
Yeah, it is like a baton. It's in the acknowledgements, I call them my holy retinue of editors, because there's a character in the book who has this holy retinue of knights, and there was literally nearly the same number. But yeah, it's a very collaborative process. And people will sometimes say, oh, well, what do you do when you're published? Because the editor just takes it and makes it into something else. I'm like, no, that's not true at all. It's very much, we talk about it. Sometimes I've disagreed with my editor on something. Like there was a case where one of the editors wanted to kill off a character at the end of the Priory, the Orange Tree. And also it was very late in the process. And I was like, no, I need time to mourn this character if I'm going to kill him, for one thing. But I just said, no, I felt like it felt very vindictive. I just think it felt very wrong to me for the character. And because I felt so strongly about it, the editor was like, okay, fine, we'll leave it. You go with your instinct. But sometimes there's things that they suggest. Mostly I tried to listen to them, because editors do know what they're doing. That is their job. They edit books. So you never want to be the kind of author who just refuses edits and thinks that they're just perfect from the get-go. Yeah, it's a conversation. It's not the editor dictating to you.
Cool. Right, Chris, writing community questions. Let's get them in.
Yeah, so we have some staple questions on the show.
Sure.
And the first one is, if you could take any character from fiction fiction, books, TV, film, everything, and make them your own and have a crack at that character, do whatever you want with them. So you could put them in a book, you could write a screenplay for them. Which character would that be and why?
Wow, that is such a huge question. Oh, wow. That is really, really hard, because there's so many. I want to be really cliched and say Mr. Rochester, because he's an old fascination of mine. Yeah, I'm genuinely not sure. There's definitely, I've never really thought about that deeply. There's often books I wish I'd written, but I don't necessarily ever have that moment where I'm like, I wish I'd written that character, because characters to me are so personal. Paige is very personal to me and my experiences, whereas I've often just thought, oh, I wish I'd written that book. So something like Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, or The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Like, they're just really genius books. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent from your question, but it was a hard question.
No, it leads beautifully into the next question.
It does. We love a tangent on this show anyway. It's fine. The next part of this question, which kind of fits more into what you just said, is if you could change the ending to any book, what ending would you change and why?
Oh, Lord. Maybe I want to say maybe the end of Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. I don't know if you've read that, but it ends on this awful, tragic cliffhanger. And even though I wouldn't necessarily change it because it affects the rest of the series, I remember when I was a kid, I read that book and it just hurt me so deeply. So I guess probably for my younger self, I would say perhaps I would like to see an alternate ending to that one that was a bit happier, but while also saying that I wouldn't change Mallory's genius.
Stella on the chat has said, have a petition to have Samantha rewrite season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Oh God, is that because I've personally moaned about season 8 of Game of Thrones so many times?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you're not the only one.
Yeah, I had some issues with that, let us say.
Nice. The last question that we've got is a bit of a morbid one, so we're going to take you to a morbid place.
Oh.
But you're on your deathbed. And you're looking back at I told you it was morbid.
It is. Odd.
You're looking back at your writing career. What is success to you? What would you be happy with?
That's actually a nice question. Morbid start, but nice. It's interesting because I have always said to myself, what is the most important thing to me? Is it sales? Is it having a fan base? Is it, popularity, or is it awards? I think ultimately it is just about readers finding your work. The thing that really matters to me is when I get messages from readers saying, this is how your writing changed my life. This is how your writing got me through a bad period. This is how it affected me or helped me discover something about myself. And even if it's only one person, like, to think that my words have been able to change someone or help them in some way is really lovely. So that is ultimately success to me. It's having, you know, my writing find as many people as possible and hopefully affect them in some way or mean something to them. And this is why I'm so grateful for my translators in different countries, because it's them that allows me to reach more readers. So yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and I think there's things I would definitely like on a fun level. Like, I would love to have a bigger fan base and see more fan art and stuff like that, but that's just a little thing. But yeah, ultimately it's about people finding some meaning in my books.
Nice. And Samantha, on the topic of your fans, you've got some pretty crazy friends already. So have you had any experience, like, have you got like a favorite experience with a fan, or like a really strange experience with a fan?
I'll tell you in a minute, but we just had one. But carry on.
I've had, I'm just trying to think of the strangest experience. I think it was a guy asked me to sign his boxes once. I'd like to assume that they were clean. He was asking a bunch of authors at a convention I went to. I mean, pretty much every meeting with a fan is awesome to me, and it's something I've really missed in the pandemic, actually, because even though I can obviously talk to my readers online, it's quite different getting to meet them in person and hang out. It is always amazing when I see that readers have had like tattoos of quotes of the book. That's quite an incredible experience, just to know that it meant something so deeply to them that they've actually had it tattooed on them. So that's always pretty cool. Yeah, I've had various odd experiences, but I can't think of them off the top of my head now. Mostly they're very positive. The boxes one was kind of random.
It was amazingly well timed what you just said, because I just blocked the first user we've ever had on the YouTube comments.
What? Why?
I won't repeat what was asked, but yes, I did, and people are grateful that I blocked him. So you're welcome, guys.
Whoa! No, I'm gonna find out what he said, because now I'm curious.
Yeah, honestly, we've never had a comment at all like that. So there you go. Well done.
Wow.
You popped out in appropriate cherry on the show.
My God, I'm so sorry. It was so wholesome.
Don't be sorry. It's a learning curve for us all. Hang on.
Man.
Oh God.
Oh, Troll. I thought that was someone's name then. I thought, oh, you know him. Okay, so...
You know Troll, personally. You know Troll.
Oh, I know this guy, Troll. So what we do at this point of the show, before we get onto the questions, guys, so if you do have questions, there have been some good questions already, but if you have questions for Samantha, send them in now. And what we'll do is we'll introduce the writing community family member. And what I wish to reply to the comments they'll understand is what we care about on this show is the community and the writing community. And authors that follow the show that may have a small following, this is the time of the show that we shout them out. And we send them a GIF, GIF. And I hence this because in Ranking Thought we said gift, and that's why you sent them a gift today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was awkward.
What a guy.
It was so funny. It was amazing. He actually got out of his seat and went to look for a gift.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was brilliant.
That's so sweet. Is he one of those people that thinks it's pronounced GIF? Like, does he think it's GIF?
No, he had no idea.
He just didn't know what it was.
Oh, okay, right, cool.
No idea.
So after I play this little intro, we're going to get a GIF sent to this person, Samantha, that you can choose what GIF that is. And it can be anything at all. Anything at all. We've had the most random things in the world. So let me play this, and I will tell the people what this is. So, you all right, Chris?
Yeah, I thought the video was longer, I'm not going to lie.
So, the new family member is someone called Sarah Fox, at Sar, S-A-R, _writes. She is a writer, a reader, crime fiction fan. Oh, no, this was the other week. Apologies. Where's that gone? Sorry, guys, 1 second. Oh, there you go. Sorry, Beth Black, at Splendid MG. Sorry, guys. At SPLENIC That's a bit of a confusing one for you, Chris. She's a writer, a reader, a traveller, discoverer, ponderer, human design analyst, teacher, heretical.
Human design. That sounds fascinating.
It does. What's a heretical?
Also sounds a little bit
like a heretic. Like, it's a heretic, right? That's
right. I have no idea.
She does a lot. Let's just say that.
Mutative.
She is a woman of
Creative?
many talents, is Beth.
Mutative.
She is a woman
Creative?
of many talents, is Beth.
She is. Ravenclaw. I heart Gryffindor as well. She's got 221 followers. Yeah, that's her, Chris.
Yeah.
So can we please send her a GIF and follow her if you feel the need to? But what can we send her, Samantha? What do you like to send as a GIF?
Oh man. I mean, seriously doubt you'll be able to find it, but I once saw a GIF of like a miniature sheep falling down a hill that I still find quite funny. I have a very simple sense of humour.
I think we've had some random GIFs in the past, but a sheep falling down a hill, a mini sheep falling down a hill, is one of the most specific ones we've ever had.
It's like a little lamb. I don't know where it's from. I don't think it was her.
Oh, there you go. Lala said she's an energy worker. That's what that means, right?
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think of my knowledge of GIFs now. Like, I don't even know if I know GIFs off by heart. Like, I send them quite rarely. What was the last GIF I sent?
The miniature sheep one is not an obvious one.
No, I didn't think it would be. I've only seen it once.
Halo on the chat said, no joke, UPS just delivered Priory during this interview.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
That is very cool.
Oh boy, I guess maybe send a GIF of Drogon from Game of Thrones or something. That seems appropriate. There must be a lot of GIFs of Drogon.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, whilst people are answering this or tweet GIFing this, is there an author that you could recommend for people someone that you're really into, for people to look up?
Yes, Tasha Suri, who wrote Empire of Sand. I think that is her only novel so far, but she's got one called The Jasmine Throne coming out this year. Haven't read it yet, but I absolutely love it. I love her first book, Empire of Sand. It's basically a novel the magic system is inspired by dance and by dreaming, and it's just so beautifully written. It's like a lovely slow burn. It's just the kind of fantasy I love. So yeah, definitely Tasha Suri, and I'm excited for The Jasmine Throne. Excellent.
Sounds good. We'll look at that. Okay, so Chris, is that done?
Yeah, that was a lot easier than the little sheep falling down there.
I'm now thinking, did I imagine this? Was it a dream?
Yeah. Well, it's quite a specific GIF. Maybe it was a video or a GIF. I'm not sure.
I just showed my weirdness there. Fully showed how weird I am.
If
it doesn't exist, it needs to, because it sounds amazing.
Not on this show. It's a very normal question on this show. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions, and I'll actually backtrack because there was a few early on, and we did say save them for the second half of the show. So let's have a look through the comments. And sorry, I'll get them.
Bum, bum, bum.
Will we ever get a sequel to Priory? Lots of LGBT women would love to hear more gay goodness.
I would love to write a sequel to Priory at some point. I wasn't originally going to, because I designed it to be a standalone. But then once I created the world, it seemed like it would be kind of a waste to not tell more stories from it, because I felt like it had a lot more stories to tell. And I remember when I said to my agent, "Oh, this is going to be a standalone," he just looked at me and he went, "No, it isn't." I was like, "It is, David." And then I went back and I was like, "Yeah, sorry, I've had some more ideas." The one I'm working on right now is not a sequel. It is related to the world of the Priory of the Orange Tree. I can't say officially what it is yet because it's not announced, but it is sold and it's nearly drafted, and it is very gay. In fact, it's even gayer than the Priory of the Orange Tree. So,
well, there you go, Donna. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, question asked.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and answered.
From Thomas, have you ever watched Buffy or Charmed?
I haven't, and people look at me in complete horror when I admit this. There's actually so many kind of classic TV shows and films I haven't seen. Like, I only recently saw The Princess Bride, because my friends and I, we did like a lockdown film club in the first year of the pandemic. And it was hilarious because they were just like, "You haven't seen this? You haven't seen The Princess Bride?" And they just kind of took me through a film education. But no, I still haven't seen Buffy or Charmed, which I feel strange about. So I guess at some point I'll watch them.
I think Buffy's one of them that is, you're slightly too young, I think.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it either. I look a lot older than you, but believe it or not, I'm not that old.
You don't?
But, didn't see it.
When did it come out?
Good question. I'm
90s?
sure the internet can answer that.
I mean, I was a child in the 90s, so yeah, maybe I was a bit young for it. I was born in 91, so.
What was the film going way back in this interview that inspired you to want to be a paleontologist? Because you mentioned
Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be Ellie Sattler. She was my absolute, she was my idol. I think it was just because I was so excited when I saw a woman doing something cool in a film. Because a lot of this, the stuff I was seeing was often quite male heavy. So whenever I saw a woman in a film, I would get completely fixated on her and just want to be her. So yeah, that result. And I think I, Robot was what made me want to work with robots, because I was obsessed with Susan Calvin, like the doctor in that. Yeah, so it was normally like seeing a cool woman in a film being like, I want to be her.
Like it.
Okay. Although they're both fantasy, Priory and the Bone Season are very different. Do you feel...
He's just paused, so I'll carry on. Do you Priory and the Bone Season are very different. Did you feel more comfortable writing one over the other? And which direction do you think you'd rather go in the future?
I really like things about both of them. I think I'm more comfortable with the Bone Season just because I've been writing Paige for so long. The Bone Season just uses Paige's voice, and obviously I've been writing Paige since 2011, whereas the Priory books, each one is designed to be, you can read it as a standalone, even if all the stories are connected. So each time I'm with different characters. So the 4 characters I'm writing now are not the same 4 characters as the ones in Priory. So it took me, although I'm obviously used to them now after having written a couple of 100,000 words, it did take me a little while to get to know those characters. So yeah, I think the Bone Season, just familiarity makes it easier to write, but I love both, and I'm glad that I get to stay in both worlds for a little bit longer.
Brilliant. We have a question normally that we don't get to ask, but I feel like now's a good time to ask it because Chris has disappeared. So
Chris, where's he gone?
I'm sure he'll come back. If he doesn't, we've only got 13 minutes left, so I'm sure we'll ride it out. Somebody is on death row and they've only got time to read one of your books. So which book are you going to ask them to read and why?
That's the tricky one, because I'd want to say The Mask Falling, because I think it is my best book so far. It's my personal favourite of the books I've written, but it would also be a bit weird to recommend that to someone on death row when it's the 4th book in a series, because I would be asking them to try to understand it
a bit cruel as well.
A little bit cruel, yeah. I mean, some people have apparently read The Mask Falling and somehow understood what was happening. I mean, there is a character guide at the back, but yeah, probably Priory, just for safety. Oh, and also if they read the Bone Season, they wouldn't know what happened in the other books. So I think it would have to be Priory.
Yeah, I love the idea of them going to death row, like going, I need to know what happens at the end.
Yeah, that's cruel. I think standalone would make sense.
Yeah. So I'm sure there's going to be other questions that prop up, but are there any books in particular that you're looking forward to reading this year?
Yes, there are. I'm looking forward to Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, which looks really interesting. I'm not super into vampires. I've always been. I remember when people started saying, I want vampires to come back. And I was like, I'm not ready. But I am looking forward to seeing Jay's take on vampires, because I think it'll be really interesting. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. I am looking forward to The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. What else am I looking forward to? There's so many books coming out this year, like so many really interesting looking books. Just trying to think of some of the ones I've been sent. I get sent a lot of books now. I'm very fortunate. But yeah, those are 3 of them.
Do you find that really irritating that you get sent loads of books? Because obviously you'll see them and you'll probably read the blurb and you'll think, oh, that sounds amazing. But you obviously don't have time to read all of them because, you got a really busy time yourself.
Yeah, it is difficult. But I mean, it's wonderful to be sent so many books, but at the moment I have so many that I want to read, and trying to choose which one to read is just immensely difficult. Like I've got She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan, which is another one I'm really looking forward to. I have Fireheart Tiger by Aliette de Bodard, and it's just, I have so many I want to get to, and I'm just desperate to finish my draft so that I can have like a week of reading.
Yeah. And your books have been optioned now, haven't they? I don't know if you can talk about it. I'm not going to ask you to talk loads about it, but if you were given the option, would you be involved in the writing side of it and the casting as well?
Yeah, so The Bone Season was originally optioned for film by Andy Serkis's production company, the Imaginarium Studios, and I had so much fun working with them. Like Andy is such a nice guy, and so is his production partner, Jonathan Cavendish, and we had a really good time like planning it, and because obviously Andy's super into motion capture, so we were planning all the different things we're going to do with it. And 20th Century Fox was the studio that was funding it. Although I really liked the screenplay, it convinced me that The Bone Season could not be a film. I just think that too much would have to be edited out of it. Too much had been flattened and sort of simplified for Hollywood. So it did convince me that it had to be a TV show. And now it has been re-optioned by a British production company called Luna Park, who are developing it for TV, hopefully. Wow. I actually wrote a pilot for it. I don't really know if it's any good or not. Like we took it to Hollywood to do just an initial sort of feel of what the testing the water, and I got some good feedback on it, but ultimately I know that I don't necessarily have the experience in screenwriting, so I don't really want The Bone Season to be my test. Like I want someone experienced to make it really good, but I definitely love to be involved in it, like in casting and stuff like that, absolutely. And it's another chance to reapproach the work, because like I said, I would love to edit The Bone Season. Obviously I can't do that, but I can edit it by making the TV show a little different and doing new things in that. So I really hope I'll be able to be involved.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you approach writing a pilot? Because obviously you mentioned before about taking things out and not necessarily having to show everyone how the world works in that initial instance. So how did you go about thinking that and then putting it into a show?
It was an interesting process, because obviously it's not like a book where, I mean, I suppose you can have a narrator talking over and saying, this is what this world is, but it doesn't really work particularly well. I actually wrote a completely new opening scene for The Bone Season in the pilot. I took it right the way back to when Paige is a child in Ireland, and I opened the book like that to give us an idea of who she is. And yeah, it's just about trying to transmit enough information that the viewer isn't confused, but also to keep them curious and interested, and to at least and to not massively overwhelm them with information. So it was an interesting challenge, to try and express all this in dialogue and visuals rather than having that internal monologue. But it was a really fun process. I don't know whether my pilot will be the one that gets used. I really don't mind handing the reins to someone more experienced, but it would definitely be fun to suggest scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Talking about experience, I've literally just learned through experience, because I clicked on the comments and realized I can see all the questions. So
good.
the fact that I was coming up with questions, I no longer have to do that. I can actually ask the ones that people have sent in. So I'll take.
They were very good questions.
They are. I don't know if I can show them on screen. If I click it, I'm not going to click it in case it goes off. So I'll just ask them. This is from Vince Stevenson, and he says, "What or who has been your biggest influence as a writer?"
I think probably Margaret Atwood, because when I hadn't discovered Margaret Atwood until I was 18, and I remember when I left school to go to Oxford, my two teachers who taught me English and were really great about, they were like tutoring me in their spare time and everything. They gave me a copy of The Handmaid's Tale, and they wrote in it, "We think you're really going to love this, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we think you will." And before that, I had never heard of dystopian fiction. I'd never really heard of feminism even, which seems incredible. When I was 18, I just didn't really know what feminism was. So the fact that Margaret sort of got me into both dystopia and feminism, both of which have profoundly affected my writing. So I definitely have to hand it to Margaret. And she was so lovely when I met her in person. I got to meet her in Edinburgh, I think the year I was published, or maybe the year after. And I remember I just sat beside her, and we were having this launch dinner for her, because she's published by Bloomsbury as well. And Neil Gaiman was there, and it was all very intense.
Wow.
Neil's also
Talk about a dinner party, like
it was so much.
The writer's dinner party.
Yeah, it was like me and an editor and Neil Gaiman and Margaret Atwood. And I was like, what am I doing here? And I remember I just sat beside her, because my editor very sweetly put me next to her. And I just sat there and I was like, I literally don't know what to say. I'm so scared. And then she sort of was like, "So what's your book about?" And I just turned to her and I let out this like stream of consciousness. I was like, "Oh my God, Margaret, I just love your work so much. Like, it just taught me everything I know about feminism. You taught me that women are equal and we have to fight for our rights." I just went on and on and on. She just sat there and like absorbed it all. She was really nice to me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's one of the best writer stories that I've heard, hands down.
Yeah.
Let's see some of the other questions that we've got coming in. Do you usually, so this is Aaliyah, and she said, do usually the characters come to you first when you start a new project? / do you focus on working on character development before exploring plot / world building, or does it depend?
Welcome back. It's sort of a combination. Like with both of my book, how I start a book does depend. So the Priory of the Orange Tree, I sort of came up with the world first because it was a reimagining of the legend of George and the Dragon. So when I was developing it, I was thinking of how I was going to integrate George and the Dragon into a fantasy setting. And I based some of the country names on names from the legend. I based the orange tree comes from the legend of George and the Dragon. So in that case, it was sort of setting first, I suppose. And then the characters came from that. But the Bone season, it was very much a voice. The voice and the setting came to me almost at the same time. So like I said, I was inspired by Seven Dials in London. That's definitely what kicked it off. And I knew it was going to be set in London and Oxford. And again, I knew about the magic system, but it was pretty quick that once I came up with that idea, Paige's voice just came into my head so clearly. And I had never written in a first person voice before. And I just remember her voice saying, "I like to imagine there were more of us in the beginning," which is the opening line of the Bone season. And I was like, oh, like I straight away knew who this character was. I didn't know everything about her, of course, but I knew the kind of person she was, and I knew her voice. And so yeah, it is kind of, it's not a particularly helpful, clear-cut answer, but it is sort of, they're very entangled, and it does depend on the idea.
Wow, it's amazing.
Hi,
Chris,
guys.
you missed some amazing stories when you've left. Like literally, Samantha saved the really fun stuff. But as soon as you disappeared, she was like, "Right, we can talk about the good stuff
This
now."
smile is full of rage inside. There's so much rage inside right now.
No. So
there's going to be an email to a certain internet thing, I can tell you. I'm not sure what you asked or answered, so there's a couple of questions left, and we'll throw them in very quickly before we play the game, because I want to see you beat Chris, obviously.
I'll tell you what, I know where we are, so
okay. Have you asked
carry on.
this question from Malala Love?
No.
I would love Netflix for the Bone season. Like, are you kidding me?
Hasn't it been optioned already?
Yeah. I mean, it's been auctioned by a production company, and we haven't taken it to Netflix yet. That would be the ultimate dream for me.
I saw a thing, and it was Wikipedia, so it may be wrong. But it said Andy Serkis's company is optioned this.
Yeah, I was just saying. They
done that, mate.
Oh, yeah. God damn it! I mean, he's a legend, right?
Oh, he's wonderful. When I say he is like the nicest man I've ever met. I mean, it's such a shame we're not working together anymore.
And you've met him?
Oh, I've met him several times. Yeah, like he actually invited me to like a posh London screening of The Hobbit.
That's right, guys. I'll listen back on the podcast.
Yeah, listen. The stuff you missed she's not just met Andy, she's met loads of really good people. So listen back, Chris, and you can get on that. So Bella Stevens says, which book was your favourite to write?
I think I keep saying The Mask Falling, but it was The Mask Falling. The reason for that is it combines all of my favourite things about the first 3 Bone season books. So it's got the close interaction between the 2 leads. It's got the kind of clairvoyant underworld action of the Mime Order, and it's also got the heist kind of, high stakes heist of the songwriting. So it was just really good fun, and I got to. It was fun because I knew that I was going to have this brutal cliffhanger, and I got to set it in Paris, which is like my favorite city in the world. And it was a lovely experience. It's one of the first times that normally I have a bit of an anxiety attack before a book goes to print, because I'm so scared that there's going to be a typo or something. But The Mask Falling, I was just like, okay, bye. I know you're good. I know you're my favorite. You go.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Sarah, she commented, my wife, I fixed it. And everyone said, good job, well done. And Left Chris is back, someone commented. Left Chris. Okay, so...
Left Chris? Sorry, I just got
that. Which character has been the hardest for you to write or put your feet in their shoes?
I find it pretty easy, actually. Like, I mean, when I was writing The Priory of the Orange Tree, I was quite worried about writing this character called Nicolaes, because he is a 64-year-old man. And I was like, I think when I started writing Priory, I was about 25, maybe. And I was like, am I going to be able to step into the shoes of a 65-year-old man? 64. And I was like, okay. But actually, I found I got on very well with him, possibly because he's like all my bitterness towards the world expressed in one character. And I actually had such a great time with him. It's weird. I can pretty much put myself in all of their shoes, including the villains. Like, I mean, obviously it's quite difficult if a villain does something particularly cruel or, nasty, but I try to at least, even the villain is the hero of their own story. I know it's kind of a cliche, but I can at least get into their mindset. So that's not something I find massively challenging.
Do you find it almost, you say you found it quite easy to do this, but like to change the sort of, if someone's from a different place in your stories or sort of their characters from different backgrounds, to sort of give them an individual voice, is that something you find easy as well? Or is that something you need to work on?
It's interesting in third person because when you're writing in first, obviously you can give the character's voice sort of distinctions. Like, I mean, I try to make Paige sound quite Irish, for example, because she's an Irish character. So I try to use Irish turns of phrase that I might not use as an English person. But yeah, it is interesting with third because ultimately you're sort of writing in your voice as the third person narrator. You are telling the reader the story of what these characters are doing. They are not telling the reader themselves. So that is always interesting. I suppose I try to make them notice different things. In Priory, the characters have very different religious beliefs, so that helps shape their narrative. 3 of them are extremely religious, and then one of them is completely a-religious. So that was interesting as well, and it just gives you quite different perspectives. I mean, I like to imagine that, when a reader opens the page, they will know which character's head they're in. And that's actually why I've never attempted to do 2 first person voices before, because I think I've got Paige's voice down to an art, but I really admire authors who can write 2 first person voices, because I think that making the I voice sound distinct between 2 characters is immensely difficult. It's real talent to have.
Fantastic.
Time to play the game, Chris.
Time to play the game. Are you ready for this, Chris?
I mean, I wasn't ready last week and I had a surprise victory, so I'm going to say I'm not ready again, and hopefully something will happen.
I almost want to say it was kind of flawed last week, but,
of course you would. Of course you would say that.
Okay, so what this game is... Oh, in fact, we have got a little video for this. I forgot about it last week, did I?
This is exciting.
Yeah. So, here we go. So this game is called Play Your Drafts Right. And it's kind of a take on Play Your Cards Right, but with books. So we give you a book in a year, and you simply have to answer whether the next book on the list was published before or after, or higher or lower than the first book. So it's a best of 10, and I threw my pen in a rage, so I've lost that. I'll find it.
This is so exciting. I've realised I haven't actually played a game for about a year.
Oh, well, we play lots of silly games and things on this show. But, okay, so Samantha, you're the guest, so you can go first. And what we're starting with is 2006 and The Lovely Bones, which was by Alice Sebold?
Sebold, right? No?
It's close, right?
Maybe.
So, is Bridget Jones's Diary, was it published before or after 2006?
Before?
Okay.
Do we have to say, I'm going to say 2002.
Yeah, give a year, because then I can give a point to the closest year.
I should know this because Helen Fielding actually went to my college at Oxford. Oh, God. I feel like it's 2004.
Chris, you said 2002?
Yeah, I did.
And 2004? It's in fact, according to Goodreads, these are, by the way,
okay,
1999.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, so I win.
Okay, yeah, you win.
You've won 1 point. Calm down.
Got 1 point. 1 out of 10.
Damn, I should have known that.
Well, it's a small victory for me, that, because I don't think I'm going to win anymore.
Everyone on the chat before, fight to the death. We're not doing that anymore, Halo. that Ofcom were all over that show. Okay, so we're in 1999. Is 1,000 Splendid Suns before or after 1999?
Oh, after.
Have you got a year?
Why is my head saying 2004 every time?
Every answer.
Okay, I'm just going to say 2004.
I'm going to say 2006.
The answer is 1st of June,
oh,
2007.
God,
Mr. Hooley's.
Why? You better say a book that was published in 2004. Why is my brain saying this over and over again?
We'll have a look. Okay, so anyone in the chat there? 2008, someone said. Well, that's very close. Yeah, some good answers there. So, 2007, is the Da Vinci Code, was that released before or after 2007?
Just
The
before.
Da Vinci Code written by Robert Langdon.
Yeah.
I think before. Oh yeah, Robert Langdon. No.
He's the main character. Did he bring his own version out? Didn't like Dan Brown?
This, according to Goodreads, all right? The dates
Goodreads
and
is wrong, my
authors.
friend.
Hey,
He's definitely not the author of the Da Vinci.
No, he's not. I mean, I sometimes think that Dan Brown and Robert Langdon are quite similar.
The same person, yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
Goodreads have got it wrong.
Maybe.
hey, we'll pull them up on it because I took the blame off myself because I always get it wrong and copied from Goodreads, right? So blame Goodreads.
Okay. What was it? 2000?
We were 2007.
I said
this-
before. I think it's just before.
Okay. Have we got a guess? A year?
2005, maybe, or maybe it's one of those cases where it was actually in the 90s, but it didn't get famous until in the 2000s. I feel like it's 2005, but I don't know why.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna annoy Samantha a little bit and say 2004, and if it's
Oh
right,
God, oh God, I'm gonna.
You wouldn't believe it, but no, it's 2006. So Samantha makes a point.
Oh, I win.
Yes.
yeah.
It's got one back. We got one back.
Good one. I knew it was about that time because I dimly remember reading the Da Vinci Code about that age. So
2004. Someone guessed that? No, it wasn't.
what happened in 2004? It was obviously a very meaningful year to me.
Okay, so we're in 2006, and we are moving on to The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. Was that before or after 2006?
I'm going to say before. I genuinely have no idea.
Have a stab at a year.
I'm gonna say after and say 2008.
Okay.
I think I was thinking of a different bee book. Oh God, I'm just going to take a wild guess and say 1996. I've literally no idea.
Wow. So 96. And Chris, what did you have?
2008.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure what to do with this because technically it was 2003.
Oh.
So it was lower, but you were way off. We'll give it to our guest. It's too old.
Oh, thank you. It's very gracious.
You're welcome. Lucky, Chris. Let's have a look. It's actually 2003. Again, take it up with Goodreads. I'm taking the blame away from me.
No, that was right,
to
mate.
be fair, Goodreads guesses my publication dates before my books are even announced. So.
They know everything. Okay, so we're moving on to The Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson, before or after 2003.
Oh my God. I was one of those, I think I was slightly too old for Percy Jackson. So I mean, you're never too old, I suppose, but I feel like it was sort of 2000 that came out, but again, I'm guessing.
Okay.
I was thinking later than
After in capitals from Shook the Fanboy. After
I'm going to say 2010.
2010. Okay, it was published, according to Goodreads, in March 2006.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Because I just feel like he's always been there. He's like Uncle Rick of the internet. So I think I just felt like his books must be like really kind of, I don't know, just from long ago.
Okay, so 2006, we are moving on to The Golden Compass. His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. Before or after 2006?
I'm going to say before.
Got
2005. Why is my brain only stuck on 2005 and 2004?
Yeah, there's something happened in those 2 years there.
2002.
Okay. Well, I actually threw a spanner in the works there because it is a lot earlier than that. So Chris really wins the point. It is in fact 1996.
Ooh.
Oh damn! I should have done my 90s guess there.
Yeah. So we're in the 90s right now. So 1996. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Before or after 1996?
Why don't I know when any books came out?
I remember reading this, but it had been out for a while, I think, when I read it.
I feel like it's earlier, like maybe in the 80s sometime. But again, I don't know why I get an 80s vibe from that title.
See, I was very much the opposite. I was going to say like 2012.
You're almost
Really?
certainly right.
No, I was going to say much.
You are both way
Really?
apart from this answer.
Okay. I'm curious
What's the chat saying? Let's have a look. Oh, it's very split as well. All split. Ooh.
I feel really embarrassed that I don't know any of these.
Yeah, we're not perfectionists on this show, I can tell you.
I think I think I obviously stopped memorizing book dates because I had to do so many of them for essays at uni. So I was like, I don't care when these books go out.
Have a complete guess. Were you saying before, Samantha?
Yeah, before.
And Huli after?
Yeah, I said 2012.
Okay, well, apparently 1999. So it's 3 years, 4 years after, 3 years after. So
Okay.
we're currently 5 points to 2.
Yeah, you're definitely going to
So we need a good run. We need a good run. Okay, 1999, we're moving on to Room by Emma Donoghue.
That's like 2018, maybe.
I guess I'll say 2017. I'm, again, not really sure.
It's a great guess because it gives you 1 point.
Hey!
The answer
As
is
if Room is that old, seriously.
2010. Yeah, but it makes you, a lot of these you think, late 2000, maybe 2020, 2019. It's getting there. The Passage by Justin Cronin, before or after 2010?
Again, no idea. Why don't I know any of these books? I'm going to say before, like 2008.
Okay.
I'm going to say
I don't know why.
2016. Just as a guess, because I have no idea.
Okay, it is literally 4 months before, so that gives Samantha a point.
Hey!
Ooh.
Pure guesswork.
That was
What is it now? 5-4 going into the last question.
It is. You can tie.
I'm glad I won't epically lose anyway. That makes me happy.
You can tie this.
2010.
So we're in 2010. Was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes published before or after 2010? And if so, what date?
I'm 2011.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 2014.
Making a comeback, says Bella. Samantha, you're doing great. Well done.
Thanks.
So 2011 to 2014?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2013.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Gets it by one day.
I was like, initially I was thinking it was kind of more close to the modern day, but I realized it was because the adaptation came out that I was thinking that.
Yeah. Well done. That was a valiant effort. And I actually set 3 tiebreaker questions because last time we had a tiebreaker and I didn't set any questions, so we were very stuck. So would you want to chat a little shot at a tiebreaker question just for the fun of it?
Sure, absolutely.
And we have 3 to choose from. So 1, 2,
it's not going to take away the victory. I don't mind.
No, you can keep the victory.
That's fine. You've won. I concede.
Pick 1, 2, or 3.
3.
Okay. So there's a tiebreaker question. Guys on the chat, you can all answer this as well. If you're playing Monopoly and the other player has 3 houses on Park Lane and you land on it, how much do you owe them in pounds?
I should know this because I played Monopoly obsessively as a child, like the chocolate one. I think I was mostly eating the chocolate though. Oh shoot.
Chocolate Monopoly?
Yeah, oh my god, did you never get that? It was amazing.
No?
This is a trick
you get
question.
like chocolate money. It was brilliant.
How is it a trick question, Mr. Hooley?
Well, it's not a trick question. It's one of those questions because the cost of Park Lane confuses you to the rent of Park Lane. Because you would be like, oh yeah, I know what it cost, but then do you know what the rent is? Because the rent is not the cost, if that makes sense.
Intense Monopoly economics here.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam?
All I really remember is the chocolate and the little dog that you could play as.
Sam, do you have a brother?
I do have a brother, yeah.
What's his name?
Alfie?
Aero? Does that ring a bell?
Oh, maybe? I don't know. He uses so many aliases. Alfie, go away.
And is that a thing as well?
Oh,
is this true?
Yeah, it's Bella. Hi, guys.
Oh, there you go.
No, it's Alfie and Bella. Oh, that's so sweet of you guys to come. Bless your soul.
I just thought we were getting trolled again. But apparently so, yeah.
No,
okay. Okay, so we have some answers on the chat, and some of them.
Hang on a minute, Chris. We've never had a brother on the show before, and I know if my brother was on a show and he was trying to get in on the interview, Alfie, what is the one embarrassing story that you can tell us about Sarah? Not Sarah,
Samantha.
I will kill you. I will kill you.
About Samantha.
Make it user friendly, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So when he's thinking of
Alfie,
that,
we'll give you 20 seconds.
Yeah,
while Samantha sweats, we'll give you 20 seconds to type something in. Something. I mean,
I'm
it could be
actually
really.
sweating. I'm sweating.
well, let's answer the question first.
Bella might have a story.
Chris,
Alfie, if you say anything, I will tell Bella an embarrassing story about you.
We started a family feud.
No, he won't care. He doesn't worry about things like that.
Okay, Chris, answer this question first, the tiebreaker, and then we'll see what's sent in. So, how much do you owe if you land on 3 houses on Park Lane? In English monies,
I'm going to say £1,200.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I remember it being a lot because it would bankrupt you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, my sense of figures for Monopoly is off. I was thinking it was like tens of thousands.
What Monopoly are you playing?
Maybe I was playing like rich person's Monopoly or something.
Yeah.
I genuinely have no idea. I'm just going to guess and say 750.
Okay, Mr. Hooley wins that as well. He's £100 off.
Very close there.
Damn.
Someone said Jurassic Parkour, and I have no idea as to why, but I like the idea of it.
Actually, Alfie, you can tell the story about the parkour if you want. That was funny.
So he's asking about that. He must know it.
I think that's probably just a lucky guess. It's like, so I'll just tell it so Alfie doesn't have to. But basically, I actually told a newspaper about it.
Right, sorry.
So basically, I decided that I wanted to do parkour. Unfortunately, I have a flat foot and the coordination of a drunk flamingo. So I basically like ran at this wheelie bin, and I just managed to like epically smash into it and basically fall off it. And the thing is, I told a magazine this like as a joke, and they put as the headline like, once I tried to do parkour onto a wheelie bin and fell off. And I was like, well, you just made me look like such. I was talking about my art and how my creativity and my method, and that was the pull quote. I was furious.
I would have loved it if they turned up with cameras and stuff, ready for this big shoot.
Yeah, it was just so like I think when you tell it, it doesn't sound as funny. But Alfie and my dad were just in stitches because I just thought I was so cool when I just flipped off the edge.
Fantastic, amazing. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us, and
let us know
before we finish up, let everybody know where they can find your work and the best place to buy your books.
Okay, well, they're pretty much available from any good book retailer. Maybe not physically right now, given the bookshops are closed. But if you want to start the Bone Season series, you can either start with the Bone Season or the prequel novella, The Pale Dreamer, which will give you a little taste of the world. And The Priory of the Orange Tree is just a standalone book. So if you just want one big chunky book to read, then you can jump into that one. But yeah, the latest book in the Bone Season series is The Mask Falling.
Fantastic. Well, thank you from us, guys. We will see you on Wednesday, Chris. Yeah, buy that book. Buy the book also that supports and sponsors the show, because that helps us massively. And we will see you all on Wednesday, I think. And I will go and listen back to the part of the show that I missed, because I wanted to find out about Andy Serkis and all this. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Samantha, so much. And if you're new to the show, welcome to the family. We appreciate you. And we will see you soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.